Hey folks, Nick Jennison, the Monday Guitar Show. Struggling to make the audio work or turn the audio off. Folks, welcome on board. Thank you so much for joining us. It's Monday. We're doing the thing that we do on Mondays, which is hang out and chat about the guitar. And today we are discussing one of the hardest things that you can do with your guitar, which is single note per string alternate picking. Apparently the second hardest thing you can do with the guitar is not get sunburned. Despite the fact that I'm here in the UK, I'm just noticing how very red I am, despite having spent probably the grand total of 2 hours in my garden over the last 3 days or so. Still somehow managed to come away with a little bit of a sunburn. And that's okay with me, because that's going to turn into a lovely suntan at some point. Anyway, what are we talking about? We're not here to talk about the weather, even though we are British. We're here to talk about the guitar. If you are new here, welcome on board. We do this every Monday. We hang out, we chat about the guitar. Specifically, we chat about the guitar with the objective of making you, dear viewer, a slightly better guitar player when you leave the stream than you were when you arrived. And today, I got some tricks to show you that may improve your guitar playing, specifically some of the trickier aspects of picking. Now, this is something that's going to be useful for you in most aspects of your guitar playing. So if you are already a skilled alternate picker and you've been following through on the streams we've been talking about in the last few weeks about pick, escape, double escape playing, economy picking playing, all that sort of stuff, this is going to feed into this. But make no mistake, this is something that is quite tricky to do, but that doesn't mean it is something that is only for high level players. This is something players of every level will benefit from, especially if, like me, you've ever found yourself in the position where you just can't seem to make sense of the picking thing full stop. Maybe you have this thing that goes on where your pick struggles to hit the right string, let's say. I struggled with that for years and years and years. I just couldn't seem to get the pick to go where I wanted it to. It was a nightmare. And today we're going to fix that issue for you guys. But also we're going to give you some cool lines that you can play. It's going to be a fun time. Anyway, before we say some hellos, let me remind you that today's stream is brought to you by our friends at licklibrary.com, who are, of course, bringing you all of these streams, in addition to guitarinteractivemagazine.com, where you can go to get news, reviews, interviews, all that good shiny stuff. We also have a brand new course, which our friend Kate Strange is enjoying, called All About Arpeggios by yours truly, which, if you're looking for some things to play with your newfound single note picking chops, this course will give them to you. So, let's say some hellos and then we'll get stuck in. First things first, our first folk through the door, we have our friend Marcin, who's the first one. Well, that went well, didn't it? I managed to swipe myself with my mouse and boot myself out of the studio. It's one of those things. Thanks for that, Google. And thanks for that, Chrome, I guess. Anyway, Marcin is first to the door. Marcin, it's great to see you. PJ is here. Foghorn is just here. Larry Warren's going to catch it on the replay. Don't forget you can catch any of this in the replay. It's going to be live on YouTube. Give us a subscribe while you are there on whatever platform you happen to be watching this on. We greatly appreciate it. It helps us reach as many guitar players as we can. Response Audio is here. Kate Strange in the house, letting us know that Kate is really enjoying the All About Arpeggio course. Man, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. The course was a lot of fun to put together, but a lot of work as well. So I'm glad you're digging it. There's a lot of cool information there, I think. Helmet Strap is here. Sacred Godslayer is here. Mike Seedorf is here. Who else here for another Monday of knowledge to soak up, to incorporate into our playing? Well, thanks for that, man. I appreciate that. That's kind of what we're trying to do here. So I'm glad that our mission is proving successful so far. Jada Barter is in the house with an observation. Why is one note per string alternate picking so hard? Because of coordination of fingers and synchronization. That is actually part of it, but it's not the only thing. There's some technical tricks that we can use to make it a little bit easier for ourselves. Crank Tom is here. Franz is here. Crank Tom is right. We're going to have some spread triads going on, but it's not the only thing we'll be doing. Block 18 is in the house. Catmandu 1962 is here. Trolls Jan, whose name I'll continue to mispronounce, is here. The Swede Guitar Dude, Block 18. Transparent Timothy Appling. PJ's in the house. Is very Vi-ish. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I didn't go and see the Vi Satch band, and I'm kind of annoyed about that. It was on my birthday as well, which is kind of annoying. But when you get to a certain age, your birthday, you've got so many people that you need to see. I couldn't just take off to York and go and watch an amazing band, unfortunately. Hopefully we'll catch them some other time, but I wish I was there. Who else do we have? Transparency. Spain has 37 degrees. My goodness, I would catch fire. Mal Riley's here. Dylan Jessup is here. Our friend Raph Art is here. First time viewer. Thanks for coming on board. Who else do we have? Happy birthday, Nick. Thank you very much, man. Appreciate it. It was on Friday, just gone. And Justin Ray is here. Fabulous. So let's get into it. And let's talk about why one note per string alternate picking is such a problem for so many players. And for this, we're going to turn to our metronome, and we're going to begin by throwing ourselves head first at the problem. We've got a drum beat. I'm going to throw it on at 100 BPM and set you guys a challenge. I'm going to set you guys specifically a challenge that involves picking one note on a string versus picking lots of notes on a string. Now, we're going to go to the two hands cam for this so I can show you what's going on. The challenging question, let's maybe go to a cleaner sound. I'll maybe go to my Super Sheriff, which I think is sounding strong. It's clean enough for what we're trying to do today. So here's the challenge for us, right? What we're going to be doing is we're going to be playing the following. Let's start by playing a G major scale. We're going to be playing 3 notes on a string. Let's play fret 4, 5, and 7. Then 4, 5, and 7 on the middle 2 strings. Notice as we get faster, this will be pertinent to one note per string playing, by the way. We're going somewhere with this. Notice as we get faster, things change about the way the picking hand is moving. I'm going to show you myself first of all, right? Let me play at a moderate tempo. If I play here, notice, for those of you who were here for the last few streams, my pick can escape the strings on every stroke. As I start to speed things up, things have to change. I have to assume different escape postures for different strings. I'm going to explain all of this properly in a second, but first I want you to try it. So grab your guitars, we're playing at 100 BPM. Hopefully you guys will be able to hear the drums when I get around to turning them up. That's why they're not on. Let's put them about here. That looks about right. Hopefully you guys can hear that. There's our drums. Let's begin by playing at this kind of pace. Now, if that's too fast, let me know. This should be a speed that is challenging for most folks, requires a bit of concentration, but isn't impossible. Let's pull the speed back a little bit. Let's try going at 80 BPM. Let's go. I want you to observe your own picking hand here, as well as my picking hand. Notice with my picking hand at this speed, I'm able to move in this arcing movement, where my pick lifts away from the guitar's strings on every stroke. You should be able to do the same. As we go to our 100, things may have to change. So we're at 100 BPM. Here we may be able to continue this arcing movement, or we may have to change to this kind of movement, where we're playing with the downstroke escape and then switching to an upstroke escape as we move from one string to another. Our friend Connor is in the house. Connor has bought a Thomas Blug Strat. I saw that. Right, man, what a great guitar. What a great guitar. Transparent is saying outside picking. It is outside picking, but the same applies whether we do it starting on the high string, whether you play, which you would consider to be inside picking. It's the same thing. We have downstroke escape, upstroke escape. The inside-outside thing, I think, is a little bit of a red herring, but we're going to get to that, right? So anyway, Anyway, here's the challenge with one note per string, right? Same thing, but one note per string. This time what we're going to do is we're going to play the following. We're going to play a G major triad. We'll play 5, 4, and 3 on the D string, the G string, the B string. The reason we did this little experiment was to find a place where we ran out of the ability to do this double escaped movement, and we start to have to move to individual string escapes. I will explain all of that in detail in a second, but we're going to challenge ourselves with this. Here's our triad. That's a G major triad. Now, theoretically, we should be able to play this as fast as we can play that. And if we even leave our fingers on, it should be even easier because there's no hand synchronization to take into consideration. I promise you this will be harder, right? So let's compare. Here's our triad, 100 BPM. I want to know from you, how does this feel in comparison to this? Let's try 4 of each. We'll maybe do 8 of the triad to give it enough time to settle. So 2 bars of each. Anyone finding the triad more difficult? If you are, you're in good company, because the most of us will. We're going to creep the tempo. We're going to go up to 120 BPM. So let's go. Let's switch to the triad. Wow, why is that harder? Well, we'll get to that. Even without fingers, even without finger coordination, it's harder. Let's go to 135 BPM and see where we get to. I'm going to show you the trick with this in a second. So we go. Triad. Let me do it with individual notes. Slightly more challenging. More difficult? Yes. Let's keep going to the point where it all falls apart. Let's maybe go to 150. We'll go. That is very much double escape at this point. Notice I'm no longer able to perform this movement where the hand swings, and I have to resort to a different escape angle for each string. Let's try the triad. We go. Yikes, that is hard. Getting close to falling apart. Let's keep going. Let's push it all the way up to 170 and see how that works. Nope. Nope. Not gonna happen. Not gonna happen. So what gives with this, right? Why is this triad so much harder than the equivalent scale playing? We've got some good observations here. The equivalent scale playing, we're going to see if we can eliminate as many variables as we can, even though we have removed the need for finger synchronization. We can just leave the triad on if we want to. We don't need to sync our hands. We can just leave that be. Well, friends, it all comes back down to our good pal escape, which is something that we've been chatting about for the last few weeks on our streams, which is what happens when the pick crosses a string. Now, I'm going to give you a very quick refresher on what it means for a pick stroke to have escape, and then because folks are asking, so I'm going to explain. The reason I didn't explain straight away is I wanted you just to jump into this test, but let's very quickly go into what makes a pick stroke escape, easy for me to say, versus a pick stroke not escape. So in a nutshell, an escaped pick stroke is one that leaves the plane of the strings. Notice here, my pick is high up above the strings on these downstrokes. On the upstrokes, the pick enters and stays inside the plane of the strings. Downstrokes escape, upstrokes bury. The same is true if I use the opposite orientation, downstrokes bury, upstrokes escape. Now, for most players, we will have a preference for which one of these strokes buries, which one of them escapes. And the way we achieve it is through the angle of our forearm, essentially, in essence. There are other things going on here, but that's my favorite cue for this. Now, if you pay attention very quickly to the angle of my forearm here, my very hairy forearm apparently, I have two bones going on in my forearm. I have this one here, which is my radius, this guy down here underneath, which is my ulnar. Radius, ulnar, and a little bit of meat going on down here, which I'm not interested in. In essence, this is a Troy Grady thing here. So we've got some Troy Grady comments coming in. Yes, this is Troy's language. Nobody's explained it better, right? Nobody's explained it better. Troy's the man. In essence, an upstroke escape, where the upstrokes leave the strings, requires the arm to be oriented in such a way that the radius is not in contact with the guitar's body and the ulnar is. Notice here, this is flat. Here is the radius, this bone, moving away from the guitar's body. This is the opposite. Here I have a downstroke escape. This has the radius on the guitar, the radius on the guitar's body, this bone here, and the ulnar, this lower bone, pointing away from the guitar's body. If you want a quick reminder of which one is which bone is which, remember that thumbs up, if you think about a 1950s surfer describing something as rad, thumbs up, that is thumb side bone, that is your radius, your rad bone. Alternatively, you can just think about pointing the side of the hand that the stroke travels in away from the guitar's body. So if the thumb side points away from the guitar's body, upstrokes escape. When the pinky side of the hand points away from the guitar's body, downstrokes escape. Now, at speed, most players will have a preference. Most players will have one or the other that feels more comfortable. And sometimes it's directional. Sometimes players like to use an upstroke escape in this direction and a downstroke escape in this direction. This is common among players like myself who favor economy picking. Some players will use only upstroke escape, some players will use only downstroke escape, some players will use a combination of the two, some players will use mostly one and occasionally dip into the other. For example, Nuno Betancourt plays for the most part with an upstroke escape, but will occasionally dip into downstroke escape when he has to, because Nuno is a witch and is capable of playing basically anything with the guitar in the full Jimmy Page position. I don't know how he does it. He's Nuno. He's magic. However, this is where things become challenging for us, because on single note lines, we have to escape on every stroke. Hence, spread triads. Now, let me talk about why we have to escape, first of all, because that's the what. Here's the why. The reason we have to escape is that for alternate picking to truly be alternate picking, for it to truly be alternating, it has to be not just an alternation of pick direction, but also an alternation of the muscles that are being used. The muscles that either do this or this, the muscles that do this or this. We have to alternate between muscle sets, or alternate between movements if you prefer. Now, let me show you an example of an alternate picking approach that is not actually alternate picking, and we'll get into why. So, here's two hands cam. Watch this. If I play this, this, for all the pick strokes are alternating between down and up, is not alternate picking, because we are not alternating all of the movements that are being used. I'm having to do this movement on every pick stroke. This is a movement that we call wrist extension, to have an extended wrist versus a flexed wrist, right? Your wrist extension. If I have wrist extension on every pick stroke, I am limited by how fast I can extend and flex my wrist, which for most of us is not very fast. And the body ends up doing this circular thing. Have you ever felt that, where you're playing something and then you end up just kind of doing this weird, uncontrolled circular guy? That is normally a symptom of failing to alternate between muscle groups and between movements. But this presents us with a problem. It presents us with a problem. This is an issue, and we know that we need to alternate between muscle groups in order to be able to play with an alternate picking style effectively, cleanly, and fast, more importantly, because it's only by allowing one muscle group to work while the other muscle rests, and vice versa. That's the only way that we can actually achieve this movement that we've got going on here. Here's another one. Here's another one. Here's another one. Here's elbow. It actually doesn't matter how you move the pick from one side of the string to the other. As long as we're alternating two sets of motions, or two sets of muscles, we're okay. The problem with this is when we get to this single note alternate picking thing, if we're not alternating on every stroke, like this, wow, clumsy. Things get nasty quick. So what do we have to do? What do we do to fix this? Well, here's how we fix it. What we do is we establish a picking technique that escapes on every pick stroke, and I mean by this, the pick leaves the plane of the strings on every stroke, but still makes use of different motions on each pick movement. How do we do this? Well, let me show you. Take your hand and put it out like this. This is a Troy Grady thing. I'm stealing it from Troy. Troy is okay with people stealing it. This is not copyrighted material. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to do this first of all, and then this. This knocking on the door movement. Knocking on the door movement. I want you to play like this. Use a downstroke with a bit of wrist flexion. That's this motion. Down and flex. On the upstroke, let it come back to normal. Down and flex, up and normal. This allows us, if you look at the path of my pick, don't be distracted by my fingers. Look at the path of the pick. I'm going to hold something. I'll hold this, what have I got? I've got a Duracell battery. That'll do the trick, right? Look at the path of this Duracell battery, right? Watch this. Notice that battery is now tracing a curved line, which allows us to escape on every pick stroke. We're going to begin by exploring this on a single string, right? Let's take this together with some drums. We're going to go to 100 BPM and we're going to play very slowly. Now this works best at speed, but by establishing this slowly, things will start to come together for us. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to play with a downstroke that escapes with some flexion, and then the upstroke that returns to normal. This is done with an upstroke escape posture. So the radius is away from the guitar's body, but the flexion on the downstroke allows us to escape the guitar's body, to escape the plane of the strings, and still have an alternating picking motion. I'm not flexing on every stroke. I'm flexing on downstrokes and returning to, extending on the downstrokes, returning to flexion on the upstrokes. Let me show you from this angle. This is very different to this. If you need something to focus on my index finger knuckle. That's not what this is. It's this. Notice flexion on the downstrokes, extension on the upstrokes. Let's take this technique and move it to eighth notes. We're going to go. If we're doing this right, this technique should allow us to escape on both sides of the pick stroke while still maintaining the relaxed feeling of true alternate picking, because we're doing this motion on one stroke, this motion on the other stroke. A little complicated to get your head around, but once you get it down, it's a powerful thing. Let's go to triplets. That's our desired speed. You'll notice here, as you play with a faster and faster stroke, the stroke will start to iron out in terms of its curvature. It won't be as drastic with the curvature, but that's okay. We're now going to play the following. We're going to play a triplet figure using our triad. All we need to do here is take the same movement and slide the picking hand across the strings. Notice what I'm not doing is reaching with my picking hand. Rather, I'm sliding this movement using some slide from the picking arm. Let's try it with our triplet figure. We're going to play just the triplet triad to begin with. Let's try doing 2 repetitions. Now, if that's challenging, it could just be because the strings skip. We're going to get back to that, but I want to know if this feels a little bit easier with this motion. Let me know in the comments if it does. Now, if you want something to focus on in terms of physical cues here, you want a cue that you can pay your attention to, something to be an attentional focus as you do this. Think about the extension on the downstroke and the flexion. Yeah, extension on the downstroke, flexion on the upstroke. Think about that. Flex, extend. Extend, flex. I keep getting my names wrong, right? But this. That's the movement. Now, for some of you, here's a great one, right, from Vil S, right? He's asking the question I was literally about to say, right? Is it wrong to pick by mostly just moving the thumb and first finger? Absolutely not, right? Absolutely not, because here's the thing. We can also achieve this. I've showed you how to achieve it with wrist extension. You can actually also achieve this same escape with finger, which is really interesting. So what we can do is we can play this. So if we play the same thing, instead of a wrist extension, we can just extend the finger joint. Now, I can't make this work personally, but if we extend on the downstroke and then flex again on the upstroke, downstroke, extend, so this, that can work. Now, for me, I've never been able to make that work. For me, it has to be a wrist movement. But some very great players can make that work. I was recently sat playing with my good friend Mickey Crystal, who does a lot of this when he is playing this kind of thing. He's got a lot of finger in his picking motion. Another one, which is interesting, is Martin Miller does this as his primary double escape motion. Now, however you make this work, it doesn't really matter, but that's one way to do it. PJ is saying, not playing at the minute, Nick, but when I tried that, I almost ended up bouncing and my speed was not great. Now, what that says to me, PJ, is that says that we are flexing and extending on each stroke, that bouncing. This motion, bop, 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 is happening on every stroke, so it becomes this. We don't want this. What we want is this. We want, look at this centralized hand. We want downstroke and escape, upstroke and flex. So this movement and this movement are happening simultaneously. We go bop, bop. It takes a bit of getting used to, but look at the path of the pick here, not the path of the hand, the path of the pick. The pick's path is in a gentle semicircle. So if any of you are experiencing this bouncy movement, it's because we're doing this, we're failing to alternate between, likely it is, sorry, I'm saying it is, it's almost certainly because you're failing to alternate between motions. You're not alternating between motions. We have this same flexion extension cycle happening on each pick stroke, when what we want is we want extension on the downstroke and a return to flexion on the upstroke. I'm exaggerating here for comedic effect, but it's this. Folks asking if I should use white picks. I might have a white pick, you know. Let me just see. I've got a little box of gubbins here. Let me see if I've got a different coloured pick that I can use for this. I have a purple pick. Hopefully that'll do the trick. Marcine is saying it finally makes sense. Love that. Right, PJ is saying that's exactly what I'm doing. Well, there we go. Right. Now I'm not saying that this is an immediate fix, right? But with the purple pick, let's see if you guys can see this a little better. Still can't really see it, but you get the gist. I wish I had some white picks. Now the difficulty here in this triad exercise is the fact that we start on a downstroke, then start on an upstroke, and that's what makes it so much fun. Now, let's talk about when we might use this outside of our triads. Because that stuff is useful, right? Make no doubt, that is a useful thing to be able to do. Sorry, I've got it in my head that I have a white pick here somewhere that I can show you, right? Oh, I've got a larger white pick. This might not be super useful, but I have one that's white-ish anyway. This is my Martin pick. Hooray! We got a question from Joe Johnson. Is this how Andy Wood approaches this? This is, in fact, a way that Andy Wood does this sort of stuff. Yes, Andy has a slightly different approach to it because Andy is, for the most part, a downstroke escape player. And that's a mandolin thing. So what Andy will do is Andy will do the same sort of thing, but will extend on the upstroke rather than the downstroke. So he has the opposite. He'll play with this and then this, which is another way of doing it. So long as there is flexion extension cycle happening, which is extend on one stroke, flex on the other stroke, you can make it work. Either is fine. You just have to adjust the escape posture of the flexed stroke, if that makes sense. But either can work. Now, Andy's an interesting beast on this one because Andy, for all he is a fabulous educator, vehemently denies that he does any of this stuff. He's like, no, I don't do any of this stuff, and that is not how you should learn how to do it. Which I think is a perfectly valid point of view. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. However, what I will say is that Andy is one of these guys that just kind of figured it out. Andy is he's the technical equivalent of somebody who is 7 foot tall taking up basketball, right? Andy has several gifts that maybe the rest of us don't have as a guitar playing athlete. Just a technical aptitude, started on the right instruments at the right age and put in an absolute metric bollock ton of work. More work than basically like 99.9% of players who've ever lived. So when I'm saying this, I don't want to detract from the amount of work that Andy's put in. He is absolutely grafted at this stuff. But Andy's approach has been, hey, throw a repertoire at it and it'll work. And for him it did. But for a lot of players, myself included, that just never worked. It never made sense. I had to get into the weeds of this thing. Here is another one, right? Here's another one, another great question from Mal Riley. It says, I see you don't use your pinky finger touching the pick guard for support. Is it better that way? I actually go between. It depends what I'm doing. If I'm playing, For example, obligate. Upstroke escape stuff. Say I'm playing some Eric Johnson. That's hard. I actually don't play the Eric Johnson stuff that way. I play it a slightly different way. Say I'm playing that. I have to kind of lock in for that and make it work. There I do have some support fingers for like downstroke escape stuff. If I play, say for example, the Paul Gilbert intense rock deal, the fingers come up when they come away from the pick guard. So downstroke, upstroke escape, they're on the pick guard. Downstroke escape, they're not. I think that's more a function of they have to go somewhere rather than like I'm using them for support. But then occasionally I will have the fingers in the pick guard for support. I kind of go between, but I think for this where I have to do 2 escapes. Sometimes I do. Yeah, for the Frank stuff, sometimes I will. Yeah, sometimes it goes on there, sometimes it doesn't. It's rarely pressing into the pick guard though. It's usually just there because the fingers have to go somewhere. Otherwise I'd be doing this sort of thing, which I'm not keen on because that feels quite tense. I think I like to keep the fingers reasonably relaxed and they just sort of go wherever the hand is pointing them, but ultimately they kind of fall into this sort of shape because the hand is kind of in a loose, almost like holding a mouse or holding a tennis ball kind of grip, if that makes sense. We got a great one from our friend Vil S saying, what if every other start is a down pick? Can you clarify that, please? Because I'd love to get a bit deeper into that. What if every other start is a down pick? I think with this, every other start is a down pick because we're playing down, up, down, up, down, up. I think if you mean what if every other start is a down pick, maybe like this. Where we do down, up, down, down, up, down. I probably wouldn't do that personally, but you know, if it works for you, then that's great. If that's what you mean, where we do down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up, down. The Gypsy Jazz thing is our friend Sacred Godslayer. Gypsy Jazz is an interesting beast because if you want to play it authentically, as we found out from watching Troy's stuff, you have to play starting every string with a downstroke. Easy for me to say. So, for example, if we take the one Gypsy Jazz tune that I know, which is Montani St. Genevieve, if we were to play this authentically, every new string will be a downstroke. I cannot make that work for love nor money, right? It just doesn't work for me. You can see here that I'm doing some combination of double escape. It's downstroke escape, sorry, upstroke escape, flexion, upstroke escape, flexion. And so on and so forth. So yeah, to do a properly Gypsy Jazz style, I can't make that work. I've tried, maybe I haven't tried hard enough. We've got a great one from Artie C saying, Andy Wood says you need to take the time to feel the pick hitting the string. Takes a lot of practice. There's no easy way around it. That is all true. Absolutely all true. Absolutely all true. However, the only thing that I disagree with Andy on this one, and far be it from me, Andy's a fucking, I beg your pardon, Andy is an exponentially, orders of magnitude greater player than I. Right? No doubt. Right? No doubt on it. I wouldn't put myself on Andy's level. That'd be foolish of me. But the only thing I disagree with here is the need for technical analysis. So for me, I'm like, sometimes you need to get into the weeds and see what's not working, as opposed to the just feel it out and practice until it's right. Because sometimes that just won't happen. But you're absolutely correct. Yeah, you know, there's no way about it. And this conscious feeling of the pick on the string, and that's a very important thing. Absolutely, 100% agree. So anyway, we were talking about some ideas that you might use to take this technique and play some stuff with it that isn't just single notes on strings. So a really great example of this is Joe Bonamassa's picking technique. So Joe Bonamassa is an interesting character because he does a lot of the Eric Johnson type lines, but doesn't play them with the same mechanical approach as Eric Johnson. So let me show you what I'm talking about. I struggle to play with either of their approaches. I have my own approach that I use that I'll also share with you if you'd like. But if we take something like this, for example, let's I actually have a Joe Bonamassa style backing track, so maybe we'll do that one because that's quite fun. It's in the key of E. So this is an example of the Joe Bonamassa pentatonic thing that we're talking about. So, for example, if we take, hope that track isn't too loud. If we take, say, for example, the Eric Johnson 5s thing. Let's just turn that track down a tiny bit. There we go. That's the Eric approach. What Joe will do, which is quite remarkable, is he'll play. Now you may be sat going, what's the difference, Nick, apart from the fact that one was clearly more fluid than the other. Let me get it again. Now, you would have to be pretty eagle-eyed to spot the difference there, and certainly very eagle-eyed to spot and hear the difference, but here is the difference, right? Eric's approach to playing this, white plectrum again, for folks to see. There's the white plectrum, right? The Eric approach is to use only an upstroke escape. And then when we play our 5-note figure, which in this case is E minor pentatonic box 1, 5 notes descending, starting on the highest note of each string. Eric uses a rest stroke on the G string to begin the pattern anew with a sweep on the B string. So it's down, up, down, up, down, and then sweep for down. Again, slowly. Joe's technique is more like this. Notice it is pure double escape. What this allows us to do is this allows us to do what Mal Riley has pointed out, which is to be subconscious with our picking decisions. Now, Joe's is a great example of a technique that is very fully developed, that allows him to play basically any combination of lines. Using a pure alternate picking approach. This comes from this alternating of muscles, and if you watch Joe's hand closely, you'll see this happening. Now you'll notice that I'm struggling with that because that is not the approach that I personally take when I play these lines. I'll do some combination of Eric Johnson, and some combination of downstroke escape, a economy picking. The Joe one always feels more comfortable at slower speeds, but as soon as it gets faster, it becomes more challenging for me. But it allows us, if we have this technique developed, to play basically anything using alternate picking, because all we've got to worry about is getting this movement happening, this alternating motions, and then just getting the pick to the right string. This is the thing that all these great alternate pickers who've just figured it out talk about, is they go, well, it's just down and up, man. Just down and up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Listen to bluegrass pickers talk about this. They go, it's down and up. Why are you making it so hard? It's down and up. It's down and up. You go, yes, it is. But it's down and up with this specific alternating of muscles that a lot of us, as evidenced by the comment section, haven't quite figured out. Some people just get this. Some people just can do it, and then it's there. Some people take a bit of coaching into doing it, myself included. But once you have this, you basically have this indestructible picking technique that can play, in essence, anything, up to a certain speed, because there is a speed ceiling with this. When we get to a certain point, these double escapes just become a little bit too inefficient, and we have to fall onto single escape, which is why if you're playing absolutely blazing fast stuff, you'll normally find it's a little bit more orderly than the random stuff. How fast is blazing fast? That depends on the person. But let me show you where my own limits lie, for example. So, Joe track again. Let's try, I don't know what speed we're at here, but let's try playing some eighth notes. I think it's 16s actually. Let's try some 16 triplets. I may have to bring this track back to the start because there's going to be some changes. Let's go. Oh, it's starting to fall apart. That's getting a bit more difficult. That's where, for me, I'll fall into economy picking, because this allows me also to play on instinct. There's a simple formula for how it works. And that works for me better at faster speeds. For economy picking, if I play at slower speeds, the economy picking thing kind of falls apart. It's harder to get the timing of the sweeps right. That's where this Joe style technique comes in handy. So even at that speed with 5, we can do the Joe thing. When we start to burn, it has to be the Eric thing. For me, that kind of works, that's the Joe thing. But if we get really fast, I've lost the key. Let's find out what key we're in. I've forgotten the changes for this track. Let's go back to E. When things get really fast, it has to be single escape. Or economy picking if I want to play more complex lines. There's some hybrid going on there as well. It has to be that. Now, this again is a personal gear change that I have found, where for me I have certain limits to my playing where I can play this double escape, go anywhere, alternate picking thing, and then at a certain speed it has to change to either a more orderly single escape playing style or more of a, I guess, a gambale style economy picking thing. And where that limit lies, that is for you to decide. But what this will fill in for most of you is it'll fill in that little chunk in the middle of your playing at mid tempos where economy picking is a little bit too ragged with the timing, but maybe you can, you lose the rhythm. The double escape thing or the single escape and changing between escape postures feels a bit clumsy. This will give you that like mid-range speed, if that makes sense. It'll also give you accuracy when you're playing some spread triads thing. Save Godstairs rightly pointing out there's some hammer-ons and pull-offs in there. For sure, it's all just, at that point, at that kind of speed, I can't keep an eye on what I'm playing. That's too fast. That is basically just things that I have... That's things that I have learned through my practice. Those are lines that I've picked up in my improvisation practice. And they have to be... They have to be subconscious. That's not something that I can consciously govern every note. I'm just kind of sliding the thing around the neck, if that makes sense. Moving pathways through the neck. Folks, we've been answering a lot of questions today, but we're going to continue answering questions. So if you've got any more questions, drop them in the comments, because I would love to get to them. Here's an interesting one from Transparent. Says, should have said only down, up. Here's one. Says, I've switched to economy... here it is, right. I've switched to economy picking, or economic picking, that quickly eliminates the only down, up concept. For sure. So with this stuff, what you'll find is that your picking technique will likely change at different speeds. A great example for this, one of my favorite ones is an interview Guthrie Govan did, and this is how you should handle discoveries about your own technique, right? Because this is what happened when the master, right, the man, was confronted with his own technique. And Guthrie's deal was, I don't do economy picking, I just do alternate picking. And then somebody showed him footage that had slowed down, and he was very clearly doing economy picking. To which Guthrie's response was, well, what do you know? Maybe I do economy picking. And it's working. Great, I'm going to own it. And there you go. So what I'm trying to say with this is often these things will just feel right a certain way, and you should just do that, right? If you feel something that is working for you, run with it. But if you feel like you want more, or there's something that you can't quite crack, get a bit more in depth with the technique, right? Zone in, figure out what's actually happening. A close-up right-hand camera can really help for this, for example. Here's one from Fortress of Shred saying, my biggest problem is crossing strings. Everyone's biggest problem is crossing strings. You're not alone here. Right, you're not alone. By the way, that is both a fantastic avatar and a fantastic username, and one that I wish I'd claimed for myself. Fortress of Shred. What a name, right? What a name. So yeah, you're not on your own there, my man, or my woman, or my person. You're not on your own, because this is something that everyone contends with. What I'll encourage you to do is return to the previous 2 streams that we've done. So we did a stream last week and a stream the week before about string crossing with picking. They will have the answers for you, I think. We're going to go back to this conscious thing, though, because this is a really great observation from Mal Riley, where he says, I don't even think about my picking. Subconscious seems to make choices for me. That is absolutely the way it should be. He says, your conscious brain is slow, subconscious is fast. Practicing teaches the subconscious. There we go. In a nutshell, that is it. Now, I'm going to... bring this back to one of the texts that I talk about all the time, which is the inner game of tennis. You guys know that I love to harp on about the inner game of tennis because it's so friggin' good, right? If you haven't read the inner game, go and read the inner game. It's great. It's worth your time. But what this kind of posits is that the conscious they don't use the terms conscious and unconscious, but the brain that is thinking in terms of language that we're discussing, the self that has a bit of an ego about it and cares about what other people think about your playing and things like this, right? That self is not very good at operating your hands. This analytical self is not very good at operating your hands. The subconscious, which again is not a term that's used in a game for good reason, and they'll explain it better than I will. The subconscious, for want of a better term, is very good at operating the hands and does not do well with this kind of analysis. It does well with movements. So what we do, you'll notice that I keep talking about cues, for example, and things to focus on. Focusing on this cycle, this door knocking movement. Blap, 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 blap. That cycle there, focusing on that movement, and just the feeling of that movement will guide you to where you want to be. This is similar to the way we coach things in the powerlifts, which is the only thing that I have any athletic experience with. Don't ask me to coach a runner or a thrower or any of that stuff. But if you want me to make somebody's barbell back squat more efficient, I'm your man. We don't ask people to analyze things like torso angle, degree of knee travel, or any of that stuff. We use big cues. We say things like, focus on feeling your weight evenly distributed across your foot. And we use that sort of cueing to achieve the movements that we want. And the same is true with this. We focus on this kind of cueing to achieve the movements that we want. But this doesn't mean that we shouldn't analyze things. It just means we shouldn't be analyzing stuff while we're playing unless it's not working. If it's not working, well, hopefully you have cues to rely on. But if you're in practice, you can go in and analyze. If you're in performance, you can just fall back on what works, which ultimately is what we all do most of the time anyway. I'm sure we're all familiar with that. I am sure. Here's a great observation that keeps coming out with this one. Thinking conscious blocks the subconscious from accessing memory. Yeah, absolutely fair. I think it's more that it just kind of confuses the parts of the body or the parts of the brain that are good at driving. They're good at driving the body. They're good at driving the meat suit, as we've spoken about, operating the suit of meat. Here's another very interesting one. Fortress Dread saying, thinking tenses you up. It absolutely does, because the body doesn't know what to do with these instructions. So we use broad physical cues, tactile cues, and broad things like lean this way, and feelings and things like that. Feelings not in the sense of I feel seen, but feelings in the sense of my hand feels like this. That's what we use to govern this, but it all comes from the analysis that we do in practice. These things feed into each other. Swedish Guitar Dude says, it's very hard for me to play one-string riffs like Thunderstruck. Pick in hand gets weary and I lose timing. Any tips on that? Absolutely. So things like that, if you're playing single string work, we'll get through this, even though we're running out of time, we'll get through this. If you're playing single string licks like this, yeah, that is quite tough. Something like that. What I would probably encourage you to do with that, because we haven't really got time to go super deep on it, what I'd probably encourage you to do is to focus your attention on not just worrying about every single pick stroke, but worry about the first pick stroke of a group. So worry about synchronizing maybe the first stroke of every 4. So if we take Thunderstruck as an example. Yeah, coming unglued there. I was just experimenting with that. If we focus on bam, 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 we focus on that, rather than on every stroke, That allows us to let some of the strokes be subconscious, but then we have these conscious strokes that we're syncing up with our fingers. These conscious strokes that we're syncing up with our fingers to maintain this synchronization. Hopefully that helps. I guess it comes down to the chunking thing. I want to answer this question because we've got a new comment there, right? And we are running out of time, but we'll go a little longer. It's fine. Our friend here says, I've been playing guitar for 10 years now, and I've really delved deep into it. I've also been following you through guitar videos. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Says, I wanted to ask this. I live in Middle Earth, other words, Turkey. Well, I suppose it's literally the middle of the earth, right? Unfortunately, no matter how much effort you put in here, things don't really move forward unless somebody says okay. It's true in lots of places, I think. I don't know how things work in Turkey, but it's true in a lot of places. You'd be surprised. But hey, you shouldn't stop trying. That's all I'm going to say. Here's my question. What kind of exercises would you recommend to push my fingers even further and increase my speed? What's the minimum amount of daily practice you would suggest? Okay, here's what I would suggest. In terms of minimum amount of daily practice, I feel like the minimum amount is going to be dynamic. So what I mean by dynamic is it's going to change depending upon the person who we're answering the question for. So what I would suggest is I would suggest starting with a handful of exercises that you can measure. So in terms of finger speed exercises, you might look at something like maybe, I don't know, for argument's sake, ascending and descending groups of 4 in a major scale. And the same thing with 3s, and then the same thing with 3rds. To show you that very quickly, what you might get is this. I'm going somewhere with this, right? So ascending 4s. Descending 4s. Threes. I like these because you can measure them. Now, I'm fairly ripping through these, right? They're a little bit scrappy, but you get the gist. Now, when I say measure, what I mean by measure is measure your speed on this. And you should do an amount of practice. Let's say, for example, 20 minutes daily on these. And then you should check in a few weeks, maybe 2 weeks, and see if you've gotten better. See if you've gotten faster. You will know this because the metronome will have moved, right? Or you'll be able to play at a certain metronome mark and have it feel easier. If that is happening, if you're getting better, then the amount of practice you're doing is appropriate. It's the right amount of practice. If you're not getting better, then we need to address something. Now, if you're not getting better, what this may be is a technique issue, and you maybe need to get in and fix something. But if it's just a question of, oh, I can play it, I'm just not getting any faster, it's likely that you either need more or you, in some rare circumstances, need less. And this will depend upon how you feel. If your hands are feeling just burned out and like, oh my God, my hands are so stiff, I feel like I'm hurting myself, you may need less. But if you feel fine, but you're just not making progress, you'll likely need a bit more. And then what we'll do is we'll just increase the practice dose, i.e. the amount of time that you practice, until you start to see results, and then hold it there. So we're gradually increasing the amount of practice until we start to see things improve, and then holding it fast. Now, I can't give you a set time for this because it's going to be different for everybody. If that makes sense, right? So hopefully that is the answer to the question. I think that'll get you some results. Come back and see us on these streams and let us know, because we'd love to know how you get on with this stuff, right? We want to hear from you. We want you to be part of a little community. Yeah, we'd love to hear more results. Folks, we've run out of time. We've run out of time. I'm going to play some more. I'm going to play us out on the Joe Bonamassa thing, even though I can't remember what the changes are. I'm sure I'll figure them out in real time. What do we got? We got A minor, G, F sharp, Alex Lifeson, Spanish Fly, so on and so forth. So what's that? That's going to be B melodic minor, F Lydian, yeah, I'll try playing out on that and see how we get to. Folks, My name's Nick Jennison. Don't forget, right, if you want some vocabulary to play with your newfound single note alternate picking chops, don't forget to go check out all about arpeggios. It's available, link down below, for Lick Library members. Lesson by me, I think it's pretty good. Members have said it's pretty good, and folks in the live stream have said it's pretty good, so you should go check it out. In the meantime, don't forget to go to licklibrary.com for lessons, guitarinteractivemagazine.com for news, reviews, gear, all the other stuff. Subscribe to whatever channel you happen to be watching this on, and we'll see you next week. Let's play some stuff.